Shores regular town council meeting for June the 6th, 2023. June the 6th being the anniversary of D-Day. With that in mind, if you would all just please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Council, we have a slightly ambitious agenda before us this evening. Are there any amendments to, or may I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We have an agenda. Thank you. We also have a rather robust consent agenda with some minutes, some budget amendments that include some town business as well as activities related to our beach nourishment project and also activities related to our street improvement project. Those rather detailed budget amendments have all been voted on by us before, so that's why they were included in the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as permitted, as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The consent agenda is approved. We have our staff reports tonight, starting with our Deputy Town Manager and Planning Director, Mr. Wes Haskett. Good evening, Wes.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, mayors of council, mayor and members of council. I have a report for y'all tonight for the month of May. There were a total of 60 permits issued. They consisted of 12 zoning permits, 19 building permits. Of those 19, 2 of them were for new construction, 1 lot disturbance stormwater management permit, 1 lot disturbance demolition permit, as well as 27 trade permits. The total amount of fees collected in May was $20,000 and $20,093.70. With respect to code enforcement in May, there were 10 warning citations mailed, and they were all for solid waste ordinance violations. They continue to trickle in. With respect to our land use plan update, the consultant has compiled the comments we received on the draft plan, and they're currently working on plan revisions. The final draft will most likely be posted on the town website and presented to the planning board for a recommendation in July. And lastly, with respect to the planning board, the town planning board will hold its regular meeting here in the Pitch Center on June 19th at 5 o'clock. The purpose of the meeting is for the board to review and discuss the comments that we received on the draft updated land use plan And the board may also consider an ordinance to relinquish the Martins Point ETJ area. That concludes my report. Madam Mayor, if you'll have any comments or questions.
I'm
Any
good.
questions for Wes?
I'm
No.
good.
Thanks, Wes.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We'll hear from our police chief, Chief Cole. Good evening, Chief.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. The Police Department report for the month of May 2023. As you can see, we had 1,753 calls for service. That's about 141 less than last year. For the crimes, which are the incidents reported, we had 8 for a total of 14 charges. Criminal arrests, we had 3 for a total of 5 different charges. If anyone asked about the DOA, that was a natural cause that we assisted with. And then officers conducted 69 traffic stops. And out of those 69 traffic stops, they handed out 17 written citations for a total of 21 charges and another 24 warning citations. Our community resource officer is out working and writing parking tickets, and he issued 14 failed to display. And we had 4 motor vehicle accidents that were reportable for the month of May. Questions?
Were the motor vehicle accidents related to, for lack of a better word, cut through traffic, or were they other accidents?
Honestly, I'd have to check, to be honest with you.
And the drug charge, was that
Pardon?
the drug charge?
Those were traffic related with traffic stops that we had, are still working.
Found them in the car or the vehicle.
Yes.
Without the dog.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
We'll hear from our fire chief, Ed Limbacher. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So for the month of May, fire department responded to 52 calls. And pretty simply breaks down as 1 each of building fire, natural vegetation fire, 1 brush fire, 1 special fire, and 1 excessive heat or scorch. And that was a burned up breaker, so we're pretty fortunate on that one. 25 EMS calls, and then 1 each of motor vehicle versus pedestrian, motor vehicle with no injury, ice or water related, swimming pool, water related rescue, 1 surf rescue, 1 gas leak, 4 service calls, which is our beach wheelchair program, 4 assisted police or governmental agency, 1 public service, 2 canceled en route, and 5 fire alarms. Again, for a total of 52, and that puts us again behind about 19 calls behind last year. So it's still running behind. I'm not complaining, that's a good thing, but,
Yeah, that's good.
so,
June has started. So.
yep. Any questions?
Any questions for Chief Limbacher? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it so much. We'll now hear a report from our town manager, Cliff Ogburn. Good evening, Cliff.
Good evening. In recognition of your ambitious agenda, I'm going to be brief. The consent agenda, as you said, it included a construction project that you approved the funds for with the adoption of the current year budget. And I just wanted to share the streets that are part of that. What that is there's a series of streets that we put out the bid. This is, I guess, year 2 and part of year 3 of our 10-year street capital improvement plan. We lumped everything in year 2 and year 3 together of the same like work. And so we'll put this on our website as well and communicate this so folks will know when this work's going to start. But you can see all the streets that are going to get a 2-inch mill and fill. We put where the street work will begin and where it'll end. And the mill and fill is just simply milling down the first 2 inches of asphalt and then coming back with an overlay. So David, the Public Works Director, is told that Fred Smith, who was the low bid, will start this work sometime, and they told him mid-July, so it'll probably be mid-August. But again, just wanted to go ahead and make this public so folks will know they've got that folks who live on these streets will know the work's coming. And that's all I have.
And you were kind enough to share or to get David to compile the actual linear footage that's comprised with those projects, and came up with 2.76 miles worth of road improvements, which is really impressive for the amount of money that we're going to spend.
Yep.
So that's a good thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Anybody have anything for Cliff? Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
Appreciate it. We have tonight our first live appearance with the town of Southern Shores. Lauren Womble,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And do you have anything for us?
I
At
do
this
not
point?
have anything. I'm happy to be here in place of Phil tonight, but there's nothing to report from the town attorney.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. General public comments. Do we have anyone sign up?
$100.
We have lots of folks visiting with us tonight. We're very happy to see you all. I don't know if I made that clear at the beginning, but we are very happy to see you. This is a time where the public can sign up to comment. We have Mr. Steve Gudis. He's done this before, so I don't need to explain it to him, but possibly the second person. What we do is have you come up to the podium, tell us your name and where you live, and then we sit and listen to you very attentively. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor Moore. Thank you for that. Members of council, Mr. Ogburn, everybody here, thank you very much. Just to give a few minutes. I usually address the council with a thank you, and I'll start with that. I want to thank the council for purchasing 13 Skyline Road. As anyone who probably don't know me, but you know my beloved wife, Sally, who's Ms. Flat Top, and she's been at the head or spearheading the Flat Top movement for a long time. And to know that the town has purchased this a beautiful piece of property with preservation in the wings is delightful to, I'm not just going to speak for myself, but to many of us. Having that been said, I'm a man of passion, and I want to speak at the traffic, and the problem isn't the traffic, it's the expletive deleted Mid-County Bridge, the bridge that would never be built. Whoa. You know, we all know the problem. We all know the problem, but what could you do about it? Well, not very much. A little bit of history. Hurricane Katrina comes up to New Orleans. They're not prepared. Almost 2,000 people drowned. 1,800 something. They didn't publish the death toll in the newspapers or on newscasts for 3 solid weeks. No newscast, no newspaper. All they said was many people are dead. And they finally published the death toll. They were so embarrassed. That's why they didn't publish it for 3 solid weeks. Now, say we're in the middle of summer, and Dare County is not, you know, they will let tourism trump safety because they did it. A hurricane moved right up the sound, 75-mile-an-hour winds. Labor Day weekend, no warning, no mention. It's Labor Day weekend. We can't say anything. They didn't close the bridge with 75-mile-an-hour winds. Okay, fine. Now they evacuate the banks from the hurricanes in the Caribbean. Oh, because they can't evacuate Kerala. And the hurricane starts off Florida, and all of a sudden it muscles up from 65 to 125 miles an hour in 4 hours and starts aiming for the coast and picks up forward speed to 30 miles an hour. It has happened. Hits the sound, comes up the sound, closes Route 12, People die in their cars. They die attempting to get out of their cars when objects are blown into them and through them. And the death toll could reach 2,000. The blood is on the hands of the misguided, ill-advised, and frankly, fatuous naysayers and organizations who say no bridge. Now, Dare County can do it. All they have to do is say, okay, we're tired, Currituck County. You've been pushing us around for 30 years. Let's stop by, we're not taking your students anymore, and then put a $10 toll right at the county. We can't do that. It's illegal. That's Route 12. Do it. It'll take them weeks to stop it. And you'll collect enough money to start it. And believe me, if we did that, they'd build that bridge within 1 year. And it is time. It is time. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Tim Baker?
Good evening. My name is Tim Baker. I'm a resident of Martins Point, president of the Homeowners Association over there. I'd like to offer comments about your agenda item zoning ZTA 2208 and ask that you deny this application for a zoning change in the Martins Point Commercial District. I know it relates to the entire district. However, one property that's been cited is particularly of concern. I'm deeply concerned about the range of consequences for our community, impact on services, infrastructure, and quality of life as well. I want to be clear, I strongly support affordable housing. I spent a career at CDC building supportive services and so forth for 40 years. So I've worked in third world countries, and I've worked on global public health. It's an important focus to build affordable housing and the services. However, this proposal reminds me of some of those third world conditions. The density is frightening. It offers potential for social, societal, public health risk. Complex cultural settings are always special issues. This is not the solution for our community. I can't imagine 95 people sharing a facility with that kind of density. It's a possible communicable disease nightmare for our community. So, all of the elements that are in there that focus on the features of that living situation didn't cite the additional transportation demands of all types that'll be coming in and out of the community. That's already a complex, dense transportation corridor. Nothing in this proposal limits the residents to workforce scope only, so I can foresee it evolving to a daily hostel type living situation if allowed to flex. Shared occupancy, shared space occupancy dwelling is not a permitted use currently in the guidelines for that commercial district. I know there's been no action, no change to seek a covenant change to address that permitted use. So I ask that you follow the recommendation of the town staff and planning board and deny this zoning change for the Martins Point Commercial District.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next on our agenda is old business, which we don't seem to have any of. So we will move into our robust new business portion of our agenda. And it starts with a public hearing. So I'm going to hand it off to our town attorney.
Wonderful. All right, we'll start with item 6 under the new business. So I now open the public hearing for ZTA 2208. This is a zoning text amendment application submitted by Casey Farnell on behalf of Pleasure Palace CDEC, Inc. to amend the town code sections 36-57 and 36-207B to allow shared space occupancy dwellings in the commercial zoning district. So we will begin with staff, if you'll come to the podium, please.
Thank you, Lauren. Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. Lauren has already introduced the application, so in the interest of time, I'm going to just touch on some parts of the staff report that you all have received in your packets and that were posted, that was posted on the town website. Thank you, Lauren. The applicant is proposing a ZTA to amend Town Code Sections 36-57 and 207B to allow for shared space occupancy dwellings as a permitted use in the C Commercial District. The proposed language defines shared space occupancy dwelling as a private structure in which shared spaces are offered for rent for the purpose of providing affordable sleeping accommodations payable in money and other consideration to persons who do not meet the definition of family. The proposed requirements for shared space occupancy dwellings are: A, there shall be one parking space for every 7 residents. The parking of any motor vehicle shall only occur in a designated parking space. B, bathroom facilities shall be provided which accommodate separate use by males and females. C, the owner of the SSO shall obtain the requisite permits from the Dare County Health Department. D, the owner of the SSO shall be responsible for ensuring that residents are at all times in compliance with all town code regulations, including the town noise ordinance, The town of Southern Shores may compete or complete periodic inspections of the SSO to ensure the SSO is providing for the health and safety of the occupants. Town staff has determined that the proposed amendments are consistent with the town's currently adopted land use plan. However, given the potential impacts of the proposed use on adjacent properties, town staff recommends disapproval of the application. The town planning board recommended denial of the application 4-1 at the May 15, 2023 planning board meeting. The board also recommended that the council consider directing town staff to draft an ordinance for shared space occupancy dwellings as a special use. That concludes my staff report, Lauren.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who signed up to speak for this hearing? Is there anyone else? All right, there's no one who signed up to speak regarding this ZTA. Is there anyone here who heard the presentation and wanted to address the council regarding this matter? All right, being none, I will now close the public hearing and turn it over to the council.
Lauren, I thought you were referring.
Oh.
You guys want us to speak, we definitely, I thought you were referring to not. Sorry.
No, if you want to come on up and,
I think it's fine.
all right. That's okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, good to be in front of you guys again. I think I recognize most of you. I think you guys have been on the board since I was last here. Did want to talk just briefly and allow my client to kind of explain this, what may on paper appear to be a complicated model. I think that the intent, certainly if you read my client's, I call it a mission statement, which was a part of the application, but the intent is we can't solve affordable housing issues, of course. I mean, no one decision is going to solve that, but we believe that this is something that, if approved, could help at least put a dent in it. And my client's here because we're well aware that there's a need, particularly as you'll see, there's a focus on J1 students. Many different contracts and things of that nature with J1 entities are falling apart because there's just nowhere to stay. And that's causing an issue for our businesses. And again, my client's been contacted by several of them and local businesses to discuss the option and perhaps the ability of use of her space there, which used to be the child care center, of course, but use of her space there to combat the needs of our J1 workforce housing. The model in and of itself is pretty simple. You've got a shared space, meaning space in reference to this definition is where folks will sleep, essentially. And we've put a maximum on how many how many beds, bunks, if you will, can be within each space. But when you see space, that's what it's referring to. It's referring to the rooms in which people would be sleeping. As far as common areas, you would have a living type area. You would have a kitchen area that's shared. And then there's separate male and female bathrooms as well. And I can let my client, I mean, I know it's not a site-specific plan, but if you guys have any questions on that, then she'd be glad to answer how that would all unfold. Again, not site-specific, so not sure if it's relevant, but I think it just somewhat in closing here, town staff has stated that this ordinance is in compliance, or at least meets the spirit and intent of the land use plan. And we believe that. We stand behind that. And understanding, however, that what's been proposed is that if approved, town staff's recommending it be a special use, which what's in front of you right now as written is an administrative approval. After the planning board meeting and after thinking about it, I can understand why maybe staff's proposing special use. And I will note that if that's something that council here tonight wishes me to discuss with my client in terms of acceptance or amendment to this ordinance, that'd be something she'd be willing to discuss for sure. So in other words, I guess what I'm saying is what you have in front of you can, of course, be amended if that's something that you guys want to bring up to us. And as far as the planning board denial, the only thing I'll say about that is the reason that we didn't, I don't know if accept's the right word, but there were certain amendments, just like I was talking about, that were proposed by the planning board, but they were not off the cuff. But for me and for my client, it was something, of course, we weren't necessarily prepared to deal with on the spot because they were technical. There were things, there were items that were brought up that we knew, for example, wouldn't work at her facility. But I will note the recommendation by the staff that a special use permit be required as opposed to an administrative approval. It's our position that if you do that, that provides council with the ability to put those conditions in on a case-by-case basis. So it wasn't that we didn't see where the planning board was coming from or that there were certain concerns out there. It was just that we felt if approved as a special use permit, then those particular concerns could be dealt with. And instead of having them ironclad within an ordinance that may shut somebody out that would otherwise be approved, you guys would have that option down the road in the form of a special use permit. You would get your say on those type conditions. So I would ask that, again, though it was a denial, that it be taken into consideration that I believe a special use permit requirement could take care of some of the concerns, most of the concerns, if not all, that the planning board had. Thank you very much. And I'll let my client speak now.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me this time to speak. I understand that there are several concerns in reference to the location of my building, and as I just heard the gentleman speak earlier, I have been in business pretty much all my life. And it's one of those things that I did not take the decision to turn the childcare facility into student living lightly. When it came to my attention that these people wanted me to bring people into the building last year and just let them put some petitions up and sleep there, I would not do that. And that's just simply because I try to do the right thing. I said, if we're going to adjust this, then we need to make sure that we're dotting all I's and crossing all T's. Again, someone that would not know my background, they might look at me and say, okay, she's been in childcare for 26 years. What makes her think that she's qualified to go now into what you're considering property management? I have been in property management for 7.5 years. So it's one of those things. I was one of the first people that was with the Village of Nags Head when that was developed. So it's one of these things that I know that we have certain policies and procedures that we are going to have to put in place to assure that none of these things that somewhat appear to be concerns to others, I'm a firm believer in having issues of concerns. I don't have problems because I adjust those concerns before they have problems. Now, how do we do that? We make sure the proper policies and then the procedures to follow those policies are in place. which I have done so. So I don't want anyone to sit here and think, oh, well, Ms. Pledger just decided that, she's just going to put housing these students in this building and have no idea how she's going to run the organization, which was a question that was asked to me. When I built that facility, for better lack of words, I just have to say it just like it is. When it was developed with the town of Southern Shores, the standards that they required me to have were way above what should have been asked of me. But because I am a team player, I said, just tell me what we need. I don't have any problems with my local inspectors or anything like that, because all they know they have to do with Ms. Pledger is ask. If you ask or you present me something, then I'm going to make sure that it's done. So as far as I believe in quality, everybody is looking at the quantity of the number of students. And you have to, I don't know how to assure you other than to look at my track record within itself to say that I have that in control as well. When the gentleman just made the statement that, it's a place for diseases to be, please, come on. Look at the houses that we have here on the Outer Banks now. How close can they be? It's no difference. And all you have to do is make sure that the rooms are set up accordingly. The square footage is set up accordingly to make sure these things do not happen. What I am proposing is a quality facility. I am not just taking the building and taking the rooms in which we currently have and just throwing a bunch of bunk beds in there and saying, okay, we're just giving someone a place to sleep. I am making sure not only do they have the proper square footage apart that they're supposed to have, but they are also having a solid barrier, which the CDC, when you look at that, they only require 6 foot. So to say that that's what is needed to be put in place to assure that we stand back from a communicable disease. So to sit here and say that, it's just going to be a pool for diseases to be carried out, what are you really saying? And when you're also saying the culture that is going to be there, we should also be embracing the culture diversity. That is the fuel of our economy as well. So I want you to rest assured, I am not just sitting back and not taking everything everybody's saying into consideration and making sure that I do everything possible to make sure I ease your mind when it comes to the quality of care that's going to be coming out of that facility. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
I have a couple.
Yes.
Because you're proposing something fresh, shows you're gonna have to educate us at the same time. Can you hear me all right?
No.
I can't, go ahead.
Where does your square footage guideline come from? Because it's not present in the ZTA language.
The state code for adult living, if we're going into site definitions, is 50 for adults, is 50 square foot per person.
And that is in what, administrative code, building code?
Building code.
For this type of dwelling? 50 square foot?
Yes,
per occupant.
yes.
And then the health department guidelines, do you know those?
Yes, sir, I do. Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. For your amenities, for the adult toiletries, it is 1 toilet per every 10 people. It is 1 sink for every 10 people, and it is 1 shower for every 10 people.
Sorry, I'm taking notes. And your facility has that. How many, given those guidelines, how many people would be able to fit within your facility?
The facility could actually hold, as far as adults, 95 people, which would mean we would need, 10 toilets, 10 sinks, 12 showers.
Yep.
And we are currently way above that with an addition, like I said in my proposal, with an exception to adding in the additional showers and adding in 4 additional wash machine and dryers. We currently have 18 toilets already in that facility, 1 urinal, 30 sinks, and that doesn't even include the kitchen. The building is ready to go as it is, with an exception to the showers and adding an additional washing machine and dryer.
Now, parking is in your ZTA. Where did those numbers come from?
The parking, Mr. Vanel looked up, and that is also what they had presented to us, is saying that there would be one parking space for every 7 people, and we currently have 18.
Which authority came up with that number?
She was just saying that I came up with and I based
Is
it
it
on.
a shot in the
and I-
dark or?
No, I based it on it's my client, it's her application. So I based it on the available parking that she
Okay.
currently has.
Did you do any research into other parking requirements for similar occupancy?
There were a few other towns who had similar-esque ordinances, but nothing exactly like this. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Neal, I don't recall what the similarities or not were on the parking. But she can tell you, however, how she envisions a facility like this, not necessarily just hers, but like this running.
And as far as what we had early, as far as what we had earlier, when we opened the facility, because it was more like a retail, like a revolving door, parents coming in and coming out, they allowed for a parking space for every 5 people. So, but what you have to understand about the students that we're catering to is the majority of them are going to be on bikes, or either they're going to be shuttled in. So there's not going to be a parking issue. And you might say, well, how do you control that? You control it by policy and procedures. Also, the largest amount of the students will come from actual corporate businesses. It's not something that I'm individually now I will take on an individual if there was the space. However, I'm going to be mainly dealing with the businesses. And so not only will you have my policies in place, but the businesses are also going to have their policies in place. So therefore, these students, they're going to be locked in. And one thing, if anyone had anything to say about Ms. Pledger, is I don't play. I play with children. I don't play with adults. And what I mean by that is when I put a policy or a procedure in place, just like it was in childcare, all money is not good money. I will enroll you and I will disenroll you as quick as I will enroll you. So it's one of those things that I don't take it lightly. If I put something in place, I expect you to abide by it. And if you do not, then there better be a good reason.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Is there an example of a shared space occupancy dwelling somewhere nearby, in Dare County or adjacent counties?
Well, there is. However, you can't even begin to compare my facility with the, can we use that name?
Down, I believe it's Nags Head, if I'm not mistaken. And we learned this through conversations with the septic, the health department with Dare County. There is something that the Dare County Health Department thought was very similar to this, and I do believe it was Nags Head. You can actually see it off the bypass if you're headed, if it's in between the highways, but it's got a big red and white sign that says affordable housing. Really, I think what it is condos that have kind of been converted into let's say more crowded condo now. Like there's bunks in each room and things of that nature. And I think that's why maybe Dare County compared this to that. Southern Shores, obviously, no. But that's the only facility currently I'm aware of. And
They weren't permitted as such, is what you're telling me.
They are.
no, they were. So they had to go in.
So Nags Head has a shared space occupancy dwelling.
I've not done the
Ordinance.
research on
Okay.
that. I haven't, but I would have to assume based on the Dare County Health Department's statement that, again, this is exactly like what you're trying to do here down in Nags. I would assume it falls under some type of use down in Nags Head. And Wes, I don't know, you may know something more. He doesn't either. Again, I'm basing that off what the septic or what the health department told us.
Thank you.
And on the parking, Matt, I'm glad you brought that up. So in thinking back, actually, what the goal was, and as you can tell, the envisionment here is that, J1 students are focused. They come in. We know they don't bring cars with them. And that's, we're driving to help that. So really with parking, we were looking to make it as restrictive as we could, which is why I went and based it on what my client currently had. Now, just because that's the number of spaces my client has and it would fit the mold if this were approved, since it's a listed condition, every single applicant that comes before you is going to be held to that same standard, since that is one of the written conditions. So from a parking perspective, you're kind of pigeonholing, if you will, applicants from, again, having these big, huge money-making type homes or facilities, because this isn't for the transient in and out, bring a family of, in a minivan, park all those minivans outside. That's not what this is intended to be. And it's also, again, why we excluded short-term rentals, vacation homes, things of that nature from this particular definition, and excluded the term family, actually, from this particular definition. So we do believe that if the parking standard is approved as it's written, that it will help quell any type of concerns over parking, because that's not, you gotta have a lot of space to have that parking to comply with these requirements. So.
I have a question. I'm sure this is easily explained, but part of your proposal says to provide affordable sleeping accommodations payable in money and other consideration. What is the other consideration? I don't understand that.
So that's me being a lawyer. That could honestly be struck, and it could say good funds, cash or other good funds. Consideration meaning if it's credit card, if it's whatever. I mean, some way or another.
Yeah, I would strike that.
That's again, that we are here and certainly willing to entertain any comments or proposed revisions. But that's what that was intended to account for. Something other than cash money.
Okay, and the 50 square feet that you cited, what is that for? I mean, I've known jails that offer larger accommodations than 50 square feet. Maybe that's just my background, but that's a tiny space.
Actually, it's not. It's when you're talking about sleeping space, what they're looking at is the distance in between the two beddings. And so when you have a 50 square feet, you're talking maybe from here to the end of this corner here before the next bed is up against it. And again, it's all for the square footage is to help with communicable diseases.
Okay, but the 50 square feet would include all of your common areas also. It's not just the bedroom area. I mean, you're lumping it all in together.
It is going to be all, but you have to have 50 square feet per room. So if I have, for an example, if we put 12 people, if we have 12 people in a room, then we're going to need 612 square feet on a minimum. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of empty space left over in that room. But that is what the rule is. We have to have 50 square foot of space within that room.
Is there a requirement for the common area?
I'm sorry.
Is there a requirement for common area in addition to that?
There is not a requirement as far as the sleeping. However, again, I believe in quality. And so when these people were coming to me, I have two rooms that are really, really, really extremely large. And they were saying to me, oh no, you don't need the, and I have them set up, and one of them is a cafeteria, and one of them is what we call the comfort zone, which is pretty much just a large living space. So I have them set up in zones. And one of the things that they were saying was that, oh, they don't need that much space. They don't need that much space. I'm not going to do that. I also train for the state as well. And so it's one of those things that I'm going to make sure that when you look at my face, that everything and my name is behind something, that it's done the correct way. I'm not going to cut corners. We're not trying to throw a bunch of people in here. Every dollar is not a good dollar. And so it's not one of these things where I'm trying to cram as many people in the building as I can to make the maximum amount of money as we can. Yes, anyone in business needs to make a little bit of money to keep the business going. But it is not my top priority, because if truth be told, I made more money doing the childcare if it came down to just $1. What I am trying to present is to aid in an opportunity where someone had come to me. I'm semi-retired at this point, and if anyone goes by the building, obviously people are looking at the building. That building is in tip-top shape, and I am not there a lot at this point. I'm back and forth in between Charlotte, and so it's one of those things that I make sure that that building does not become an eyesore for the community, no way, shape, form, or fashion. It would be the same way I would keep it if they were there. It's all about the policies and the procedures that you put in place and who you have managing. And I'm hoping that you will take in consideration and that you will approve this. And I have already made arrangements with the things that I have going on in Charlotte. I need to be here for the first 2 years because yes, you can put things on paper. We know that. We can set up with a proposal, but we have to make sure that proposal works the way that we plan it out. So I'm a firm believer. I feel that I need to be here to make sure that it is doing what it needs to be doing. So I'm making all these efforts, RAs on site, things that this other building that was presented, I will not call the name, that was presented that we would be compared to. I'm just like, oh no, we can't do this. And so that's why when you asked me, I was like, well, there is, but it isn't, because that's not going to be what we're going to offer. And it's not to say that whatever anyone else is doing, it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's not something I would put my own children in. So I'm not going to put anybody else's children in it. I don't care what country they come from. And so it's, I would think that as a community, that these students that are a fuel of our economy, that if you think enough of them that you can bring them in and let them assist us in those ways, then we should think enough of them to give them decent housing as well. And my advisor might get me for saying this, but it just is what it is. You know, look, I don't want, and it's no disrespect in any way, but I don't think there's anyone in this audience or anyone that's sitting on this panel that lives in this area that can look me in my face and say that these children, these students are not already in the community. I looked at it today as I was driving here. They were just biking right on down, right past, the Martins Point driveway. And I'm just sitting here going, okay. And so they're already here in our community. And so the only thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do it the right way. I'm not trying to do it under the table. I've come to you. And we're in a position to where what can we do wrong? We're on the front. So I'm going to run it the same way I ran the child care center. They're just older children to me. It's going to be ran in a quality manner.
I have maybe a comment and then a question. First, the question that the density for this, if you were doing apartments, it'd be R8. So you're maxed out about 35 occupants on this parcel if you're to redevelop it for residential. So now we're jumping to 95. Do you have any comments on how to square that? Because I think that's.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part you said.
You would be allowed 35 people basically on this property if you were to develop it as apartments or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And with this proposal, you're looking at close to 95. And I'm trying to figure out how we square that. I mean, that's a pretty significant increase from what our current code would allow. And maybe, Mr. Varnell, you've done research on how these things fit. I mean, it's a pretty big jump. Even if you were to build a hotel there, you'd be limited more. So
I would say that what's going to limit this type of project more than anything is the model, the actual business design behind it, because the complexes that you're talking about are going to be for families, or they're going to be for vacationers or something of that nature. This, you can't be a family to stay there. Yeah. You've got to have, you're a solo human walking into this place that is looking for a bunk. That's what you're looking for. So, and that's the way the definition's written. So that's how I think if I had to break it down, that's how I would differentiate. But again, I will note that we are here, and if there are notions of wanting to decrease that, then that's something that we can discuss.
I'll just, so that we're not leaving you in the dark here. I think you have the expertise and the talent and the ability to make this work. And I am all for having affordable housing for all sorts of people. And I'm all for treating our J1 students in the best possible manner and giving them, a good place to live. Because after all, the J1 program is an educational program as much as it is a work program. I think a ZTA is the wrong way to go here, because this would not only apply to your particular place, but it would apply to other, and I just can't see this happening. So I'm a no on the ZTA. The special use permit, you might pursue that. I also have real concerns about 95 people in 7,400 square feet. That just sounds like too many people. But I think you've got a good heart, you've got the ability, and I think you can make this work, and I hope you'll pursue it. I'm a no on the ZTA.
Ms. Sherlock, if I may, you said the ZTA is the wrong route. The correct route would, in your mind, maybe, not that you're guaranteeing anything, variance, would that be the alternative? I'm just trying
A
to.
ZTA that doesn't make it use by right, but has it under a conditional use section.
Right, which is exactly what we said we'd be more than willing to accept.
To piggyback a little bit, I mean, if this would apply to the general commercial district as a use by right, it's way too open right now.
Way
I mean, if I have a warehouse over there.
Which is why I led off with
Ms. Pledger, they're
we take
bad
it.
actors in our marketplace. This gives them too much room to move. And that's the reality of it. So we need to figure out, I think there's generally going to be agreement, I would think, that special use would be 100% preferable to conditional, than use by right. And then we need to figure out what kind of restrictions need to be in the text to guarantee somebody other than yourself utilizing this language follows the rules and does the right thing. Because you're going to go above and beyond, but not everybody will.
Understood. And just for the record, we will absolutely, if that would be the suggestion of the board, but of course, conditions wise, you guys don't have in your mind what conditions you may want otherwise, but we would absolutely say, amend it right here now today. This can be submitted, and we can do that. I mean,
I don't think that's what staff was recommending. Staff recommended that if the board wanted to consider that, they would consider a text amendment, which I think would have to go back to the planning board for review and comment for those conditions. I don't know that staff's prepared to amend
Well,
on the
there's some
spot
other
today.
elements.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought your recommendation was to approve it as submitted, but approve it as a special use as opposed to.
Condition.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm not.
The recommendation at the planning board was, we recommended denial unless it was approved, unless you all changed it to special use. You all did not change it to special use. So tonight it's being presented as a permitted use, therefore we recommended it.
Right, I meant the staff report. Sorry.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, just to echo, this would apply across the commercial district.
Yes.
I think that's the major heartburn that you're hearing from this council. I think, to echo again, our primary concern is not parking. Our primary concern is the health and safety of the J1 students. And clearly, Ms. Pledger, you have that at the front of your agenda as well. So we hear you. It's just, we think this is not the right tool, not the right process. And so that's why you're hearing us say what we're saying.
Well, just another comment. The J1 students, as I understand it, the employer today has to provide housing for them. And some of the employers, they do have, and you'll probably, if you're going to be working with them, you're going to be contracting with an employer of some sort. But as I understand it, these employers have got their own standards of what they expect and how many people they have in a bedroom. They also, some I talked to, I mentioned some of the numbers, and they just flat told me it was too many. And they also, in their bedrooms, they also have an expectation of a separate bathroom off the bedroom. So that's going to limit you.
No, it would not.
Well, if you have a bedroom and there's no bathroom and a shower and all that right next to it, I think that's what they're looking at,
Well,
or at least what I have been told. So I think, I don't know how much work you have done with the employers, but you might want to get what their expectation is, because they're going to be the ones responsible for the well-being of those J1s.
and if I may, the two employers that I have spoken with already, yeah, I understand exactly what you were saying. However, again, I had to go into management mode and say, you're coming to me, and this is how my facility is going to run. So I've taken two very large rooms. I've already had this building designed out, so it's not something that I'm just talking all willy-nilly off my head about. I've taken two of the rooms already and turned them into full male and female locker rooms. Each one of those locker rooms, the males have 6 showers, the females have 6 showers. There's a handicap shower. There's a separate RA shower, et cetera, et cetera. So therefore, when these students they also have the toiletries, yes, they have right directly in their actual sleeping area. But as far as showering, they're coming out of their individual rooms into a secluded locker room for males and females.
I'd still have a problem with 95
Well,
people. Now, apparently you've done your homework. What's your break even number?
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, let's get-
Tell-
let's wait. Yeah, let's-
Let's wrap this up.
yeah, let's wrap this up.
Casey has come to me several times about this, and I cannot make it work if we cannot let's do 65 in there. It just can't.
65?
With the construction that we have to do in that building to make it what it needs to be and the quality that I want to present, that is the absolute lowest number I can bring it down to.
Ms. Carlin, we appreciate that question. Thank you.
Like,
Very
So,
astute of you to point
If
that
the
out.
board, does the board have any more questions for the applicant? And then, did the board have any questions for staff?
No.
Okay, and we didn't have anybody signed up, so if there were no more questions and nothing else from staff, then we can go ahead and close this public hearing and then turn it over to the council to deliberate and make a decision.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Pledger.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I will just note that in your consideration, deliberation, I know you gave some comments already. And before you take any action, you do need to make a consistency statement regarding whether the action you're going to take to approve or deny the zoning amendment is consistent with the land use plan. And that is generally in the end of your staff report. And I believe the action that you are going to take. So when you get to that point, if you need some assistance, I'll be happy to chime in.
Very good. Thanks, Laura. Council, is there any further discussion on, we had a rather extensive discussion already. Is there any additional discussion desired at this point?
No.
Okay. Would someone like to present a motion of either approving or denying this zoning text amendment?
Well, I move that we deny ZTA -22-08 for all the reasons that we have discussed before. I just think a ZTA is not appropriate in this case.
And I'll second that motion. So we have a motion to deny. We have a second. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is denied, 5-0. Do we need to make a statement now?
So I would just, part of your action would be that you would find that the action you are taking is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan.
Can I just state that?
that's fine. You can just make that, someone can make that a motion.
Terrific. The action that we just took to deny the ZTA is consistent with our land use plan. Thank you. All right, moving on.
Do we have a present for a
Thank
motion?
you.
or
You got, that's a motion, and so you got to
And we
vote.
voted that's another motion?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
Can I have that's a motion? Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Second motion also carries. Excuse me, my
And
bad.
so just for clarification, because I think the applicant would be inquiring about what kind of recommendation, and you guys talked about this a little bit. So in terms of a ZTA that not being the proper avenue, I know that this version of a text amendment is not the avenue this council felt was appropriate for this type of use. Are you giving further instruction to staff or the applicant to pursue a text amendment that would permit a use of this type through a special use permit with other requirements? I heard lower occupancy being one of those things, maybe parking, square footage, bathroom facilities. Is that something that I believe they were asking that during the hearing, that if that's something they wanted to pursue, that would be the avenue they needed to maybe address with staff later.
If that's something they're interested in, they need to deal with staff.
Okay.
I mean, just a special use is without a doubt. I mean, but I think there needs to be clear stipulations on the actual occupancy, and rather than just deferring to the building code. I'm okay with deferring to the health code for the toiletries, but this is me personally, not the rest of the council. But I definitely would like to see some square footage stated out there. Parking looked at a little bit more. Even, it says not available to a family, but I don't know if there's any way to even limit it to a visa student coming for work and experiencing. That may not be legal, but that's something is limited to that, so the purpose of the occupancy is clear.
K-1 students aren't year-round.
No.
So it's got to be a use of the building 9 months out of the year, I would think.
Yeah, somebody will-
I'm with the Mayor Pro Tem here,
What's that use?
Yeah, what's that use? What's the plan for the whole year, not just for, the 3 months or 4 months that they're here? And some do stay here year-round, I know that. We all know that. But I think it would be better use of it.
Would it be?
Work with us, with the town. I mean, there's no question, all of us think we need some kind of portable housing. There's no question about it, but it's got to be done right. This just didn't feel good.
All right.
Right after we read it.
And not because it's just, it applies to the whole commercial district and any business owner.
Okay.
And it's way too vague. That's right.
Yeah.
So.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, and we do have an ambitious agenda, so I'm going to move on to the next item. So we will move to item 7 under new business, and I will now open the public hearing for ZTA 2304. This is a zoning text amendment application submitted by Matthew Huban to amend the town code sections 36-207C1B, 36-207C1.5B, 36-207C11J, 36-207C11K, 36-207D7, and 36-207, D8, to establish a 50-foot setback requirement for restaurants from planned unit developments, a 50-foot setback requirement for drive-through facilities or establishments small from planned unit developments, a 50-foot setback required for mixed-use group developments from planned unit developments and residential districts, a 50-foot setback requirement for commercial buildings and facilities from planned use developments, a 20-foot buffer requirement where mixed-use group developments abuts a residential district or planned unit development, and a 20-foot buffer requirement where commercial use or zone abuts a residential district or planned unit development. So we will start with staff, and then we will go to the applicant.
Thank you, Lauren. Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. Again, I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights in the staff report that was included in your packets and was posted on the town's website with your packets. With respect to the history of this application or the background, planned unit developments were removed as a permitted use in the town in the RS10 district in 2005. Town staff determined that the town's current zoning map incorrectly shows Southern Shores Landing as 1/3 C general commercial and 2/3 RS10 residential around March 1st of this year. The town and town staff have been operating as if Southern Shores Landing was zoned residential pursuant to the zoning map. The applicant submitted a zoning map amendment and withdrew it, and town staff submitted a zoning map amendment and withdrew it earlier this year as well. Town staff drafted a ZTA, which was ZTA-23-02, and withdrew it. And the applicant is now proposing ZTA-2304 that proposes the same amendments as ZTA-2302. With respect to land use plan consistency, town staff has determined that the ZTA is consistent with the town's existing and future land use map and the town's currently adopted land use plan. Specifically, Policy 2, Action Item 2B, Policy 7, Action Item 7B, Policy 26, and Action Item 26B. Staff conclusion, including Planning Board report. The Town Planning Board unanimously 5-0 recommended approval of the application at the May 15, 2023 Planning Board meeting. The proposed amendments are not inconsistent with the town's currently adopted land use plan. However, town staff believes that the concerns regarding setback, stormwater, and buffer requirements can be more specifically addressed through conditions and special use permits. When a special use, such as a restaurant, drive-through facilities or establishments, small mixed-use developments, et cetera, are proposed. In addition, the proposed amendments would render the dentist office located at 1 South Dogwood Trail and the Southern Shores Landing wastewater treatment plant non-conforming. That concludes my highlight of the staff report, Lauren. Also, I did present the planning board's recommendation, but Chairperson Ward is here tonight, and I'm sure he probably would like to make a few comments as well.
Did the council have any questions for staff right now?
Not right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and Mr. Huban?
Yes.
I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
Perfect.
Must have stole a lot of my thunder, but I was gonna say.
I'm just going to go ahead and read what I had prepared, even though I'm going to cover pretty much everything that Wes just stated, plus some other stuff. My name is Matthew Huban, resident at 110 Landing Trail and designated representative for Southern Shores Landing. Please be patient as I have a lot to say. I would like to start by thanking the town manager, planning director, planning board, and town council for working on this issue over the last few months to help get us to this vote tonight. I know it's been a situation that none of you created or could have anticipated. I was hoping to stand in front of you tonight to speak on the final vote of the ZTA and put to rest this issue we have been dealing with for the last 4 months. However, that is not the case. I was just recently made aware that Saga Development has filed an application this afternoon to develop the property behind our community. For those of you that don't understand the significance of that application filing, let me explain. In order for me to give you that explanation, I need to start from the beginning. The residents of Southern Shores Landing were notified by our property manager on January 25th of this year that Saga was interested in negotiating an easement that our community shares with their property. In this email was a site plan and color layout of the intended development Saga wanted to build. Upon seeing that site plan, I immediately noticed that the intended development went right up to the property line of Southern Shores Landing with little to no buffer. During our community special meeting on February 4th, I asked the Saga representative that was present to explain how they could build right up to our community line, as we are a residential community and that a 50-foot buffer is required. After consulting with Cribble and Associates, who developed the site plan, it was determined that Southern Shores Landing was split zone with approximately 2/3 of the community zone high-density residential and the houses on Landing Trail, which border Saga's property zone commercial. Thus, Saga could build up to the property with no buffer. Of course, we were all shocked at the meeting. And as a side note, our community rejected their easement offer. The following week, I contacted the town planning department and asked them to investigate this issue. After several weeks of investigation, there was still no answer as to why and when the split zoning happened. All the while, the town's land use plan, Dare County tax records, and tax zoning map showed Southern Shores Landing as high-density residential. Those in the town also shared that they had been operating as if Southern Shores Landing was a residential community. I then filed a zoning map amendment to bring the entire community of Southern Shores Landing into the high-density residential zone, thus affording the community the 50-foot buffer between us and Saga's property. After filing the ZMA, I was asked to pull that application, and the town of Southern Shores would instead file the ZMA to change the zoning. A special meeting was held on March 3rd with the planning board, who then recommended that the town council approve the ZMA at their March 21st meeting. Days prior to the town council meeting, the town pulled the ZMA application. At the town council meeting on the 21st, there was a lot of discussion as to how the split zoning occurred, potential causes, and possible errors as to how this could happen. But the overall line of thought was a mistake was made and what could be done to rectify the situation. The town manager, Cliff Alburn, was asked by the mayor if the town was operating over the last 16 years as if Southern Shores Landing was a residential community, and his response was yes. After the meeting, the town council directed the planning director and town manager to reach out to Saga to start the process of working on a solution to give Southern Shores Landing the 50-foot buffer. Council also directed staff to work on a new ZTA to better address the issues with Southern Shores Landing. After the new ZTA was drafted by staff, the town felt the situation could better be resolved by placing conditions on the site plan if and when it was submitted by Saga. The ZTA was not put on the next planning board agenda. I then requested a copy of the ZTA and filed the application and the exact ZTA staff had drafted on April 12th. At the May 15th planning board meeting, members voted unanimously to recommend approval of the ZTA to the town council for tonight's meeting. During that planning board meeting, I was made aware of new information. It was said during the meeting that in May of 2022, during a town council meeting, the applicant at the time, Saga, asked for a 50-foot buffer to be added to the zoning text between mixed use and residential developments. Remember, at that time, the town of Southern Shores was operating as if Southern Shores Landing was a residential development and granted that request. During the meeting, it was stated again that the planning board will look to impose special conditions on any site plan submitted by Saga in order to protect Southern Shores Landing with the 50-foot buffer. I think it's clear to everyone here tonight that the town has acknowledged that Southern Shores Landing should be afforded the 50-foot buffer as a planned unit development residential use, and an unprecedented mistake occurred many years ago. That has finally brought me to the answer of the question, why is it so significant of Saga's application filing today? There is a state statute or law that says a developer does not have to abide by any changes in zoning that takes place after an application has been filed. By them beating the clock and filing their application today, even if the council approves the ZTA for the 50-foot buffer, Saga will not have to honor it. It is my sincere hope that each of you will vote to approve this ZTA as recommended by the planning board. As I have stated in previous meetings through this process, we are not trying to stop building on that commercial lot that abuts our community, but are asking for the 50-foot buffer that already exists between our properties. At previous meetings, the town has expressed the desire to keep that buffer at 50 feet when and if Saga files their site plan by placing conditions. While we have no doubt of the town's intentions to keep that promise, the owner of that property may not build in the next few months or years. That would leave our community in limbo with no protection as it stands today. By voting to approve the ZTA presented before you, we'll give our community a minimum level of protection from any future development by keeping the existing 50-foot tree line buffer that separates our two properties, with the town being able to impose any additional conditions as you see fit when and if a site plan is submitted. Now that we all know that a site plan is on the way, it will be up to each of you here tonight, the planning board, planning director, and town manager to make good on your past statements and assurances to hold Saga to the 50-foot buffer between Southern Shores Landing and their property. Remember, they asked for the 50-foot buffer last year. Thank you.
The council have any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, thank you. All right, and there's no one who signed up for to comment from the community. Is there anyone here who now desires to give a comment? All right, if you'll stand up and give us your name and address and come up to the podium, please.
Andy Ward, 147 Bayberry Trail here in Southern Shores.
Okay.
Disclaimer, I'm on the planning board, but these are my personal observations and a little bit of history lesson for the town in case they forgot.
Okay.
ZTA 2202 came down the pike from the applicant, not this applicant, but the Mr. Sumit Gupta and his engineer, Michael Strader. Planning board heard that ZTA 22-02, which I would call the first version. There were 2 conditions on that ZTA that we saw. The first one. As time progressed, more conditions got put in, informal meetings with Mr. Gupta and his staff, and with our mayor, Mr. Haskett, Mr. Ogburn. Informally, we met and chatted about, where this thing was going and how we could help. At the April 22 planning board meeting, the second version came along. Now it's got 4 conditions. The original 2, which were the minimum building size and connecting breezeways in certain applications, was their original 2 conditions in this ZTA 2202. Well, now on the second version at our April meeting, we looked at the original 2 plus Highway 158 footage, which you will remember, and the central sewer requirement. So that's 4. Now we're in the third version. They took out Highway 158 frontage, added state requirement for more sewer waste water treatment, additional density limited to RS8 requirements that we were able to get in prior to any action, which limits the building to 8 units per acre. And they added a 40% net parcel for residential use. That's version 3. Version 4 was the final version that the planning board entertained, which was in May of 2022. The 4th version was heard by planning board, shored up wastewater treatment for the NC Department of Environmental Quality Water Standards required a sign off. The planning board, and that was in addition to the 4 items in the 3rd version. The planning board at our May 19th, 2022 meeting denied approval of ZTA 2206 as written. The planning board voted 4-1 to recommend 8 additional requirements be met for approval by town council and discussed at length with Mr. Gupta these conditions. He was amenable to all setback height and buffers for residential areas. Just as Mr. Eubank said, it's on YouTube in 2 spots on our planning board meeting. You're welcome to go look and see what he says, but he would accept the buffers that said 50-foot and 20-foot vegetative buffer. However, he was amenable to that. However, Mr. Gupta did state that he was not amenable to the planning board's 2 requirements for lot coverage. Mr. Gupta did state he could make 50% lot coverage or 55% if he used pervious pavers. He could make that work if it used gross rather than net in the planning board's list of requirements. We chose not to remove that, and we sent it on with our recommendations to planning board, leaving 2 requirements in there at the end. Town council holds a public hearing on ZTA 2206 on June the 7th, 2022.
it had 13 requirements, A through M. Town council was in agreement on all but the last 2 requirements, which addressed usable lot coverage. Once again, Mr. Gupta stated at the town council meeting, he could make 50% work if gross parcel area was used rather than net parcel area in the lot coverage calculation. In the end, town council approved the ZTA less the last 2 requirements concerning lot coverage. This action resulted in an additional 27,000 square feet more hard structure than the applicant had publicly stated 3 times he would accept. This is a giveaway that I find really hard to accept. And I've sent each one of you an email and you've responded back to me, and I think you understand where I'm coming from. Anyhow, in all of that, I want to read one sentence in Wes's staff report to us at our May 15th, 2023 meeting, 2 weeks ago. That sentence is apropos to what Mr. Eubank was talking about. It is important to note the town and town staff have been operating as if Southern Shores Landing was zoned residential pursuant to the zoning map. And I would venture to say that it would be accurate to add the planning board and the town council and Mr. Gupta and his engineer, Mr. Strader, to that list of people that thought that Southern Shores Landing was entirely residential. The residents of Southern Shores Landing have had the rug pulled out from underneath them in all of this confusion. Nobody's fault. It's a muddled up mess, and Cliff can attest to it. However, I'll finish up saying this. Taking advantage of this situation by the developer would be disingenuous at best. It would certainly be an unfortunate beginning to an otherwise worthwhile project in our community. Our town's leadership, all of you, planning board, people sitting behind me, our town's leadership must commit to make certain that adequate buffers are achieved if and when a final site plan is presented for a special use permit. They deserve it at Southern Shores Landing, and we need to help them. Thank you.
Does the council have any questions or for anyone else before we close the public hearing? No? Okay, so we will close the public hearing.
Well, I guess I have a question for Wes. Can I
Sure.
ask him a question?
Of course.
Wes, if we don't approve this CTA, how do we protect these property owners? Because they have a very legitimate concern here. You're recommending that we deny the CTA. If we do, what are their options?
So, and maybe I can just chime in real quick, and if you don't mind, regarding this ZTA. So I think it's important for the council, just like the last ZTA, this is a ZTA, although Southern Shores resident has applied for it, this is a ZTA that will cover the entire town. And so when the council is analyzing this, that's the perspective that I think staff has taken regarding this ZTA per se. This isn't specifically about Southern Shores. While certainly it would benefit Southern Shores, this is about how the council wants to address setbacks from PUDs throughout all of Southern Shores. So in terms of the Southern Shores Landing, I'll certainly let Wes address what options.
Do we have another
that.
PUD?
I'm sorry?
Do we have another PUD?
No.
Mallard Cove,
Not the commercial district.
No.
Okay.
but not in commercial.
PUDs have to be.
But PUDs are currently zoned, are permitted in the commercial district.
Correct.
But it would still have to go through the planning board.
They still have to get, they have to be reviewed, but they are permitted in the commercial district. So they are permitted use in the commercial district, which is currently the district that Southern Shores Landing is in. And so that is, and I believe there's at least one other location within the town where a PUD could be developed in the commercial district. So this is applicable not just to Southern Shores
Yeah,
Landing.
I get that.
Try to answer your question, Ms. Sherlock, town staff believes that the concerns regarding setbacks and buffer requirements and stormwater can be more specifically addressed through conditions in special use permits whenever a special use permit is submitted for any of these uses listed in the ZTA, including restaurants, drive-through facilities, small mixed-use developments, et cetera. That we do feel like a special use permit and conditions in special use permit, when the planning board and the town council considers it, if and when that time comes, that would be the appropriate way to address it.
And who would apply for the special
Yeah, that was
use?
my question.
It depends on where we're talking about. It depends on the use. In the Southern Shores Landing situation, it would be, we received, as Mr. Huban pointed out today, we received an application today from Saga for the mixed-use group development on the property adjacent to Southern Shores Landing. So you all will be, at some point in the near future, considering holding a public hearing, quasi-judicial public hearing, for a special use permit for that use. As Mr. Huban pointed out, this language, if adopted tonight, will not have any effect on it if they so choose, because they applied for it before you all approved it. That's based on the state law. But going forward for other special uses as they are proposed, if you all don't adopt this, we feel like special use permit conditions can address the same situations for those uses, depending on what it is, what special use it is. But if you all adopt this, then this will apply to future plan unit developments. It'll apply to future restaurants, drive-through facilities, small, or other mixed-use group developments. So
That abut a PUD.
that abut a PUD or residential district or any of those in that list.
And how does it affect the dentist office, the CTA?
So if this is approved tonight, the dentist office currently and the parking area currently sit within 50 feet of Southern Shores Landing, as well as the Southern Shores Landing wastewater treatment plant. That area, they're both zoned commercial, and they both are within 50 feet of the planned unit development. That is Southern Shores Landing.
So I was thinking that the wastewater treatment plant was actually part of the PUD, so that the only non-conforming, that the wastewater treatment was approved with the PUD, so the only non-conforming
Would be the dentist office.
would be the dentist
Dentist
office.
office.
Okay.
It was approved of the PUD, yeah, but it's under separate ownership than the HOA of the PUD, which is weird, but.
Okay.
So did the application today have a 50-foot buffer?
The application,
Well-
Like he asked, like he
So
promised
I-
in May, like he agreed to in May.
So I'm gonna have to
You could
be the
have to
traffic,
table that.
I'm gonna have to be the traffic cop here and say, you can't ask that question. Because if, assuming this application continues on and the applicant continues to work through the process, this application will be before this board and you'll be sitting as a quasi judicial panel, which means you'll be sitting as an unbiased panel and you have to be able to attest to that. So that application is not before you today, so I'm going to tell you to stop.
Right.
And let's back up. What I will say is that this is completely a legislative decision for the council to make. And just a little history, and it's covered in staff's report, and I know he was trying not to go in too great detail because of everything on the agenda tonight. But a little bit of history for PUDs and Southern Shores is that about the time that Southern Shores Landing was approved, there was a moratorium on PUDs. And that's when PUDs were removed from being an approved zoning within the residential district. And that's when they were moved only solely to be permitted uses in the commercial district. And I believe that was in about 2006, maybe 2009. It's been a long time since the council has reviewed PUDs in the commercial district. Okay, so this is a completely legislative decision for you. While in a special use permit application, and when these things come before you, you can look at them as a case-by-case basis to address setbacks, stormwater, and those types of things. But this is completely legislative. It is up to you. If you feel at this juncture that the council wants to have a greater setback from PUDs in this district, that is before you tonight. So it's not about this application or that one development. It's about setbacks from PUDs.
But I guess the question is, how do we go about protecting the group?
That's
Do we
not
do that
before you
tonight? We don't do that tonight?
That, the Southern Shores Landing and an application that was received today is not before you tonight. I don't even know what that looks like. I haven't seen it. And so you haven't seen it. So in terms of what is there, what concerns staff may have, what concerns council may have, I have no idea, but that's not before you tonight.
So if we were to approve the ZTA, it would only apply to
It only
forward.
applies to anything going forward. So, and if there's an application, I think Mr. Huben mentioned, if something happens, and I believe staff also mentioned, let's say something happens to the application that was submitted today, and there's a new application. Well, it would apply to anything new after today if you adopted the ZTA, but it would not apply to the application that was received.
So what do we do going forward to try to protect this group?
Well, that's not before you tonight. The
Okay.
only thing before you tonight is the ZTA.
So
I'm sorry.
trying to
I'm
get a
losing track of
solution
Let me,
time.
So we're
let me-
working with the wrong map.
let me try to circle
Let's
us back,
circle
okay?
back, yeah.
Okay, so in the interest of the town, the staff is advising council that addressing PUDs in the future would be better served by using the special use permit process as opposed to this particular ZTA? Is that what you're advising?
Correct.
Okay,
This CTA specifically addresses buffers from PUDs in the whole commercial district.
In the
PUDs
whole
only
commercial-
allowed in the commercial district.
right.
If I have a parcel of land that's surrounded by commercial now that's already developed and is the only undeveloped parcel of land, and I want to do a PUD, what happens to the commercial that's already been there that's closer than 50 feet because it's been zoned adjacent to commercial so far?
So.
Do we force that commercial property into nonconformity?
No, so
Think
if
you
the
would.
PUD's not approved, then there couldn't be the setback.
Well, if there's a vacant parcel, and there is, but we're trying to think of the whole commercial district, and want to do a PUD in it, and it's surrounded by developed commercial that doesn't have a 50-foot separation,
Mhm.
do we now force that commercial, existing commercial into a non-conforming situation?
No, the PUD couldn't be developed.
Because the PUD couldn't be developed.
Correct.
Okay. That's even further twist. It wouldn't be eligible to be approved because
It
the
would- the site
adjacent
plan
commercial
would-
property setbacks couldn't be met?
So whatever property is there first controls, I guess it has more, I would say a vested right, although that's a legal
Yeah.
term of art. They have the established zoning. So then the PUD, I don't know that the ordinance provides for a waiver or something. I guess the council could, through the review process, approve a PUD within that setback. But
And waive the.
do a
the adjacent
variance or
50.
something to that extent to do that, but the commercial wouldn't be non-conforming. So the question about the dentist office, well, what happens to the dentist office? Well, then the dentist office has a non-conforming setback. So the dentist office, as long as it remains a dentist office, it could tear down and build back up as a dentist office, but it can't really change anything to its site because then it's non-conforming.
If it became a retail shop?
I think as long as they didn't change where the structure was, because it's commercially zoned, is that right?
It's zone commercial.
As long as they didn't change the layout or the format of the parcel itself, parking, things like that, it would just be it would be a non-conforming setback so long as it stayed in continuity. But if they wanted to level the parcel and start something else completely, if they wanted to do a drive-through, a restaurant and put a drive-through, they would have to comply with the new setbacks.
If this is adopted. Or no.
Correct. That's right. I'm talking hypothetically if you adopted
If this
it.
is passed.
Right.
But no, actually, the current, it currently, the 50-foot setback is currently in place for commercial uses that abut residential zones, but not commercial against commercial.
Yeah,
Correct.
Which is what's present.
Yep.
Correct.
How many parcels in town could have a PUD if we wanted another PUD?
That's vacant.
Yeah.
Probably-
Or currently occupied.
That's
Food line.
currently that is vacant and zone commercial would be the vacant piece of property back here behind the, where Pizza Stop and Tropical Smoothie are located.
That's the only one in the whole town?
That's the only one that comes to mind at the moment, yes, sir. But there are other commercial parcels that are fairly large, like the Marketplace, and other, the Southern Shores Crossing. I mean, if one day they were ever, torn down and redeveloped, they could possibly have a PUD on it.
And if we change this tonight, we affect all that.
Yes.
That's the
These would apply to future developments, yes, sir.
And it,
To the
If we just
entire
go to
town.
Special use, what you're saying, what the town staff's recommended, special use is the way to make this work better.
That's what has been
That's what
recommended.
you're saying, even though the map is inaccurate today, too.
The zoning map that the budget amendment you all did earlier, that was
Yeah,
to correct the
we
map.
pulled that, Yeah.
Fixed it.
was the part of Southern Shores Landing was never represented RS10, correct? It was always represented as commercial on the zoning map?
The current, the map right now, as it's drawn, shows 1/3 of Southern Shores Landing, the western third as commercial, and the 2/3 on the eastern side as residential RS10. And we are, after tonight, we're going to have our GIS consultant update that.
So again, just,
But that's not, also, that's not before you tonight.
It's not.
Just to be clear for the
Yeah.
council and
just to be clear, moving
everyone in
forward,
attendance, we are not addressing the zoning map tonight.
correct.
Right.
So to be clear, sir, the staff is recommending the special use permit process is a better way to go than this particular ZTA.
Yes, ma'am, that is what's been recommended.
All right. If there's no other questions, then if the board, council is ready, I will close the public hearing on this ZTA and turn it over to you for deliberation. And again, with whatever action you take, if you will, and you can do it in one motion, to state that the action you're taking is consistent with the land use plan.
I'll make a motion.
So is there any further discussion, council?
Make a motion.
Mark wants to make a motion.
Well, I'm sorry.
There's a person that wants to speak. I don't know if she can or not.
Well, we closed the public hearing at this point and no one else signed up. So the council would have to vote to reopen the public hearing and take any further comment. But at this juncture, we closed it. So if there's nothing further, the council has it.
Can I at least dispute that my house is zoned commercial?
Not right now, I'm
I
sorry.
mean, it's disputing what he just said.
So,
And I'm not even on Landing Drive. I'm on the west.
We need to-
does the council have any other, have any further discussion or deliberation before you make a decision?
I think Mark is going to make a motion.
Are we ready?
Yeah, I think.
I'll make a motion to deny CTA 2304 as presented to us this evening, even though, and it is in compliance with the current land use plan.
We have a motion. Do we have a second, council?
I'll second.
We have a second. I just would like to say that this is a really difficult, challenging issue before us, and staff has worked very hard on this, as have our attorneys as well. And in the end, I really truly believe that it's best for the town to not, if you will, limit ourselves to what the ZTA says. Perhaps in some cases, we could get more than a 50-foot setback to, between residential uses and commercial uses, which I think all of us agree would be a good thing. So anyway, I'm satisfied that I'm ready to vote.
This is hard.
This is hard.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Are you ready to take a vote?
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm struggling with it, but I understand where we may go, that it's not going to fix anything in the past. It's what we'd be fixing in the future. That doesn't impact this group. So I'm challenged with it, but I understand why we may have to vote for it, because there's another area went through a very similar situation. And I guess the conditional use permit would be the better route, or special use permit. But I'm struggling with it.
Yeah, I struggle too, but I sympathize with the residents, and having been the victim of one of these before in Ohio, I totally understand the position you're in after we bought a house and moved in and somebody built less than 50 feet from us and I didn't do my homework. So, but I do understand, but I think in the best interest of the town, we need to do this and count on our staff that when everything comes before us, that we do our homework and we put the best foot forward here.
And we have the proper conditions on there and specifically focus on this setback of that 50 foot. Because there's other issues come over there, but I'll wait till I see the final plan that I've been told to wait for. Appreciate your help.
All right, council, hearing no more discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to deny has carried 5-0. Madam Attorney, before we proceed with the next public hearing, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess, and we will reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you. We're back in session. We're moving on to the next public hearing. Our attorney, Lauren, will be handling that. Thank you, Lauren.
All right. So we will move to item 8 under new business, and I will open the public hearing for ZTA 23-03. This is a zoning text amendment application submitted by the Town of Southern Shores to amend Town Code Section 3657, 36-202D2, 36203D2, 36204D2, 36205D2, and 36206D2 to clarify the town's current lot width requirements. And I will ask staff to come to the podium, please.
Thank you again, Lauren, and good evening again, Mayor, members of council. Lauren has introduced this application, ZTA 2303. I will touch on just some of the highlights from the staff report. At the March 21, 2023 Town Council meeting, council directed town staff to draft a zoning text amendment to amend the town's minimum lot width requirements in all of the residential zoning districts so that the requirements are unambiguous. The proposed amendments include a new definition of lot width in section 36-57, which is the horizontal distance between the side lot lines of a lot. The proposed amendments also include amendments that establish that the minimum lot width for lots created after, and it is a date to be determined, it could be today, date of adoption, if adopted, or at a future date, if adopted, is measured. So lot width for lots created after whenever is measured from the front lot line at right angles to the rear lot line. Town staff has determined that the proposed amendments are consistent with the town's currently adopted land use plan, and town staff recommends approval of the application. The planning board recommended approval of the application 4-1 at the May 15, 2023 planning board meeting. With respect to the date to be determined, that is proposed so that existing lots that aren't 100 feet wide from the front lot line all the way to the rear lot line aren't rendered non-conforming if this is adopted. The date will essentially become the effective date. We realize that these requirements are more strict than what has been in place, but we believe that they are unambiguous and will prevent future subdivisions and recombinations with higher densities. If adopted, we can consider future amendments to what this will put into place to allow pie-shaped lots or other irregularly shaped lots. Any questions at this time?
You would allow pie-shaped lots?
This would not allow pie-shaped
Allow
lots.
pie-shaped lots.
Most likely not, unless they're 100 feet wide at the front, all the way to the back. But in most cases, your cul-de-sac pie-shaped lots are not 100 feet at the street, at the front lot line.
So if I had a big commercial property and I would develop the RSA dimensional standards, I have to have straight streets with real rigid lots and things like that. I can't have curving streets and a little bit.
If you had a curve, the lot line in the front would have to be 100 feet. So it would limit the number, you would have less lots than with straight lines or less lots, even if they're pie-shaped, even because they'd have to be 100 feet at the front, all the way to the back.
Start eating up in the rear.
It would eat up, yeah, it would eat up the.
So the old lots are grandfathered. This is everything going forward.
What we've proposed, this would grandfather existing lots that aren't 100 feet from the front to the back, meaning if you have a lot that is 100 feet from the front that ends up being 98 feet at the back, it's grandfathered. If it's 35 feet at the front and 100 feet at the building setback line as currently measured, and then 95 feet in the back, it also would be grandfathered. But lots like that would no longer be able to be approved, at least while this is in effect. But again, what we're asking is that we put this into place for now, and we come back and address how to address irregularly shaped lots.
So special use permits.
No, so it would be.
No, that answers everything, special use permits?
Yeah, you're right.
Good. Lauren's got that.
Good point. Good point.
I think that, so this is an issue that staff brought to kind of fix a problem, some ambiguity that was in the code. And so frequently with zoning, we take kind of a broad stroke and then we try to carve out from there rather than trying to carve out every possibility in the first run, because that can be a lot to do. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of edits, and the ambiguity was where the front setback is.
Correct.
So wouldn't it be simpler to fix the front setback at one static location rather than editing all these individual things and going to, I mean, say front setback shall be 25 feet from front lot line.
That may be the route we go with. That's a good suggestion. And you and I have talked about this after the planning board meeting. And I'm not ruling that out. I'm not saying that that's not a possibility, but if we did that, we'd have to go back to the planning board, and the quote unquote door is still open to allow for higher density subdivisions and recombinations.
Well, I know we're in question mode. We're not in discussion mode. So.
Is there any more questions for staff?
Well, this basically clears up the issue we had up here in Skyline then.
That is correct.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
It removes the ambiguity, and that was the goal of the
And that's where.
That's what
text
we were,
amendment.
that's what we were directed to do. Yes,
That's what you
ma'am.
were directed to do, and you have done that.
Yes, ma'am.
And as Lauren pointed out, you may have done it in a sledgehammer fashion
Yes.
as opposed to a tiny little pick. But it accomplishes what we asked you to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That was not a question, sorry. I apologize.
And we,
So
I don't have any further questions.
You said this is the fix for today, so we really don't know what 6 months from now will bring. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I mean,
Is that what the staff is
I-
saying?
I don't-
That's what I'm asking.
Do you know what you're breaking down?
I
know
don't,
what we're bringing here, but today, but 6 months from now, you could have something else.
I would like to see it. I'm hoping it would be done quicker than 6 months from now.
All right.
That we would be able to allow irregularly shaped lots.
And the planning board would be part of that, right?
What would, I'm sorry?
yes, they would have
Planning
to
board will be
be.
working.
The planning
with
board,
that
yes, sir.
as well,
It would be another text amendment that has to go back to the planning board and
Okay.
then comes to you all.
right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so in addition to the ambiguity issue, we also wanted to not result in additional nonconformities also being created.
That's right.
Because that's always a goal for,
Want to limit non-conform, I mean, there is some of that would happen, right? But in this situation, the idea was to limit the amount of nonconformities that exist in the town. And so having the effective date be, if you approve it today, then those prior lots would not be nonconforming. Only new lots would have to comply with this provision until or unless it is fine-tuned.
But the
and
prior
then-
lots would still be non-conforming, correct?
yes.
New undeveloped lots.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's what we're talking about, is undeveloped lots.
Developed or undeveloped.
Developed or.
Anything
Would be
without-
considered
That's right,
grandfathered.
That's right, that's
For
right, I'm
instance,
sorry.
Coming
Yeah.
around Sea Oats.
Yeah.
You got some conforming lots, but they don't meet 100-foot static at
Right.
the road. They meet 100 foot at the setback line. Those all are now becoming non-conforming under this language. So we're creating non-conformings. Doesn't, is it a whole hill of beans? Maybe not, but it's ugly.
Well, actually, those lots would not
Would be
be subject to
grandfathered.
this.
They're grandfathered.
They're not,
Yeah,
They're
because we have the
they're not
effective date.
non-conforming. That's what I was saying, is that if you, because the effective date is today, that means that
They were approved.
So what is the, so then you're effectively saying there's no dimensional standard for lots prior to this date? 'Cause
no,
we-
they have to comply with the dimensional standards that were in place when they were approved. So
Well,
they would
that
comply with the dimensional
changes a whole bunch of
standards. The lots that are in place would be measured by the dimensional standards.
The lot width requirements.
Lot
ma'am.
width requirements that were in place prior to today.
And they're already existing lots.
established, and they're existing.
I get it.
There are a handful or a good number of lots that were platted before the town was incorporated. Then we have incorporation, we had lot width requirements. Those lots are established. They met those requirements. They're not going to change.
So if those lots want to change their configuration or
They'd have to meet
be
this.
subdivided, they would have to meet the new measurements, the new
Say,
lots.
say when you
created.
got two lots, meet it, and then you combine them, what happens then?
You have to meet the new requirements if you do it
If you
tomorrow.
combine one,
Correct.
or two, or whatever the number may be.
That's right.
If you recombine or subdivide going forward, if adopted, and y'all put the effective date in as today, recombinations and subdivisions have to meet the requirements.
Do we know how many lots that would fall into that in town?
Into what could be subdivided or recombined? I don't know. There are, I would say there are a good number of lots.
Because I think we're about to get built out here, I think.
To meet these requirements, I don't know how many could be recombined, and I don't know how many could be subdivided. I couldn't tell you that right now.
If there's no other questions for staff, there's not anyone who signed up for comment. Is there anyone here who, having heard staff's presentation, want to comment?
That's
Okay.
right.
And if you could please state your name and your address, and please comment. And I will say, following the last hearing, this is your moment. If you want to speak, do it now. Okay.
Mike Stone, I live at 8 San Pedro Court. Just speaking because this does affect us, and obviously I wouldn't want to see anything that, if passed, not to have a deadline for getting everything fixed. The family currently, we probably have somewhere between 10 and 14 of these pie-shaped lots, flag lots, anywhere from Spindrift to Wild Pony to Dogwood Trail to Kingfisher Loop.
Ocean View Loop.
Yeah.
Spindrift.
I don't have one there. But do have quite a few of them. The Wild Pony and Kingfisher, there's 14 lots there. Majority of them are pie shaped. If you combine them all together, you know, it's probably close to 10 to 11 acres that if we ever decided to potentially do. I mean, the minimum lot size is still 20,000 square feet, which is a large lot for Dare County when you consider all of Dare County. Look, Kitty Hawk, Kittle Hills, Nags Head, Duck, 15,000 square feet. So 20,000 square feet is a large lot. So that should be adequate. I don't know what these things up on Skyline ended up being as far as square footage. They had 4 lots. They recombined them so that, from what I saw looking at the tax map today, so that they could build larger houses on them rather than building narrow houses on them. Because the town has permitted people to build on their 50-foot lots. So they had a bunch of 50-foot lots. Is it better to build a nice house or a bunch of narrow houses? But that's a different situation. But I'm just asking you to make the allowances on this stuff that need to be done as far as pie-shaped lots and others. I mean, like I said, I've got some L-shaped lots that were platted as they were originally years ago. And they're still sitting there on Dogwood Trail. So, I mean, this is something I've seen growing up all my life was, have a house in front and another one behind. I've seen that going all the way back to the 60s. So, all right, thanks.
All right. Is there anyone else? Does the council have any other questions for staff or? Okay, so at this time, I will close the public hearing and turn this over to the council for deliberation and vote. And don't forget the consistency statement, please. Thank you.
Right. Council, anybody need more discussion?
Just a clarification.
Yes.
For myself. This today is gonna undergo further consideration by staff. Is that correct? And quickly, is what you're saying, Wes. You're just doing what we asked you to do. And then it's quicker going to go under further consideration that we're going to work to get this clarified. Okay, all right, I just wanted to understand that. All right.
But it could also go through
What?
it could go through further consideration without passing and be cleaner, in my opinion.
But we wouldn't put a full stop on.
But
we need
I
to
think
stop.
what we're trying to do is just stop anything from happening right now.
Yeah, but I mean, often I think what I witness is such a rush to stop things is where we get gummy zoning. And, you know, we've already got 3 or 4 things we're supposed to go back to and work on. I mean, this one's pretty easy. There was one ambiguity. The ambiguity can be erased. And you don't have to go back and readdress the pilots and all that stuff. I'm not in favor. I don't like having to go back, and I don't like all the edits and dates and the zoning and all that stuff.
Well, and I will just note that the council does have the option to approve, to modify this as you're sitting here today, and approve an amended version as you suggested. And you don't have to adopt the zoning amendment as it was presented to you. So-
Yeah, what I would suggest would probably need to go back to the chair.
We need to approve this and get it out of here.
It seems like the way that the policy had been enacted by staff for, since the dawn of time was working, then ambiguity in language was pointed out, and we had to correct that, and I'd say, let's correct the ambiguity in language, which is where that setback line lives, not, you don't have to go through and edit all this other stuff.
And I understand from staff that historically, the council has operated to send any sort of change back to the planning
Yeah.
board before an approval. So if you are going, you either have to approve, disapprove, and if you want to send it back with some specifics, you can do that as well.
Yeah, we've been giving counsel that we cannot make substantive changes.
Yeah, we just made deletions.
Right.
Not text changes. I mean, just to spur things along, force my will on you all, I'll make a motion to deny this with a recommendation to send it back to planning board, specifically addressing the setback requirement and the location of that setback requirement.
So Matt's made a motion to deny. Does he have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
My problem with this is that Southern Shores is not and I appreciate the hard work on this, but Southern Shores is not a cookie cutter square lot kind of community. We're very diverse, and I think that we've got pie-shaped lots. I'm hearing L-shaped lots. I understand we may have some concerns, but I'm not as concerned as some other people in the council are about flag lots, whatever we're going to call those. Because when you do have a lot of space, you have a lot of square feet, and I guess I kind of lean on the verge of letting property owners develop their property as they can within our land use plan, low density. So I don't know. This just feels like kind of an artificial restriction, and I think it just needs another look.
Any further discussion? Is council ready to vote? We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Opposed.
Opposed.
All right, so
It's
that
3-2.
3-2, that fails. So is there a motion in the alternative?
Yes, so motion, the alternative would be to approve ZTA 2303 and acknowledging that it is consistent with our land use plan.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. I don't think we have any more discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
3-2. Motion carries. Thank you, council. We now,
Come back.
They come back with
are we good? Nope.
question is if it passes.
If it passes 3-2, it has to go back to planning board?
No, it's second reading.
Well, let's just hold that and we'll come back to that.
Okay, pull that and come back to it, all right? So, Cliff, do you want to do the town manager's recommended budget?
I was just thinking none of the public hearings had passed, and I hope this one does. It was
So you're going to
03.
introduce,
Yep.
and then we're going to go to public hearing on the budget. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quickly, the budget was presented on May 2nd. It's been advertised in the clerk's office since that date. So as I said in my staff report, it's been advertised for 5 weeks, which is well beyond the minimum amount of time. And there's what you're hearing now is there's no changes that we've recommended. So the public would be commenting on what was submitted on May 2nd.
Okay. Lauren,
Yes.
public hearing.
So we would now open the public hearing for the purpose of receiving input from citizens wishing to comment on the recommended budget for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. And no one signed up. Is there anyone here who did not sign up but wishes to give some comment? There's having nothing. I will close the public hearing.
Thank you, Lauren. Council, I think what we have to do is consider the budget ordinance, which is on page 53. And I would like to propose an amendment that we change the annual contribution for canal maintenance, which is a restricted capital reserve fund, from 50,000 to 75,000, recognizing that if we have to do maintenance on canals, it's going to require a large capital outlay, and we ought to be putting a little bit more money into that bucket than the 50,000. So that's a motion to amend.
Well, could we effectively do exactly what you just said, but do it with a budget amendment to put the 25,000 in there now? So with 50,000 in next year's budget, 25,000 now, because we have the reserve from the ARP funds.
Okay.
And that would make it 75,000. And then in 24, 25, we budget
74.
75,000.
Okay, I got you. Okay. So what do you need from us in order for that to occur?
I think a motion to approve the budget, and then a second motion to direct staff to come back with a budget amendment. You could go ahead and do it now, or we can put it on the June 20th agenda.
Okay. All right, so, council, any need for discussion about the budget? No. So,
I'll just say it was well presented this
Very-
year.
very well
I think it was
presented.
well presented, easy to follow, and I think it represented good management.
Right, and I appreciate the time that Bonnie back there has spent patiently explaining all of this to us.
Yeah.
indeed.
But I think it takes care of the folks that work in the town and recognizes their work as well. I thought it was well done. Okay, sorry.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to adopt the budget ordinance 23.06.01 as presented, and also a motion to approve a budget amendment in the amount of 25,000, which would be number 36, did you say, Bonnie? Yes, ma'am. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Those carry. And then we need a second motion to adopt amendments to the personnel policy as presented. So moved. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, council.
If I may, 9C is a recommendation to amend the unreserved fund balance policy. You all amended this from 1,000,005 or 1,750,000 is a minimum reserve. You up that to $3 million. And in recognition of kind of along the same lines of the canals is one day, we could have the Southern Shores Volunteer Fire Department could become a administrative department under the town auspices. And if we do that, we're going to need a plan for that. And so the way to do that, so it doesn't be, if we put it in capital reserve, then you can't touch it. Right. So fund balance policy is a policy. And what it does is it states your purpose and your goal of making sure we've got some money when that day comes. So we felt like it would be best placed in the policy that you can't go below $3.5 million in fund balance. And right now, I think we're at 6.5. So, but you're going to eat that pretty quickly with improvements to streets, with the Trinity culvert. But $3.5 million is pretty healthy.
Yeah,
This takes us to 8% of the budget.
Way more than that.
That's what it says, way more or less.
Right. Yeah, the recommendation from the LGC, it's a recommendation is 8%,
right.
but
Okay.
we're pushing 50.
So, council, I'd like to make a motion that we amend the fund balance policy as Town Manager Cliff Ogren just described. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The fund balance policy passes as presented, 5-0. All right, Lauren, do we need to get back to you about the 3-2 vote?
Yes, we're looking at that. If I could just have.
You want a little bit more time?
Just keep on going and
Yep.
I'll get back to you.
Okay.
I feel like there was a change with 160D to that, and so Robert and I
There
are.
was a change. Now I'm looking at it.
We're
Okay.
conferring about
All right.
that, just to make sure we don't.
No worries.
Shoot ourselves in the
we-
foot.
I think either way, the only question at this point is whether it passed or if it failed, and you have to bring it back for a second reading. But
Okay.
I think there was a change, but we'll just confirm. one way.
So council, recognizing the hour and the darkness approaching, I propose that we delay agenda item number 10 to the next meeting. We delay, sorry, Chief, item number 14 to the next meeting. Could we consider the contract amendment for our attorneys on page 74 rapidly? Basically, it's an increase in our attorney's fees effective July 1, 2023. Staff feels like the budget is there to handle it.
Why do you want to propose item 10? I mean, postpone?
Because we're running out of time. We have to go to a closed session.
Yeah. Pretty quick item. Do they need action on that to move forward?
It can wait. Can we make a motion to consider the contract amendment as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Which one are we on?
page
Are we on
74.
11?
Page 74, yes.
We're on number page 74, 11. Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well, I'll just throw in my 2 cents worth here. I think that the hourly rate is pretty reasonable. I think a 15% hike is a bit steep, but it still keeps the fees in the reasonable range. I guess I am a little confused. Are we paying a retainer of $3,000 every month? Or are we paying legal services at $36,000 a year? In other words, is it a retainer that's lost if I don't know who I'm asking this for. Retainers are generally lost.
That's
Right, so we pay $3,000 a month. If we don't call the attorneys, if we don't have a meeting, if we don't do anything, that's just gone.
Right.
Okay, no rollover.
Yeah. That, and Bonnie and I looked at that a while ago, and I don't remember exactly, but that happened maybe twice in the last 5 years. But to your point, yeah, that if we don't call them, then we'd lose the.
Okay.
It doesn't roll to the next one.
Right. So it's paid as a retainer for that month, not as like,
And they bill it first against that, and then anything above that is billed.
to pay more than that, right?
Encouraging you to call.
And how do our attorneys bill travel time?
They bill it by the, I mean, it's,
At the regular hourly rate?
right, yes, ma'am.
Seat time. It's our tech.
I drive
technicians.
fast, so.
You drive fast.
No.
Not too fast because we don't pay the fine.
Well, at $235 an hour, you should maybe slow down. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wish I had those rates.
Well, our technicians.
Yeah.
Any further discussion, council?
Seat time per hour.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So that's, takes care of that item.
And Mayor, if we could just return.
Yes.
We did confirm, there does not need to be a second reading.
Okay.
We are fine.
Okay.
160, with the adoption of 160D,
160D.
it did change.
Mhm.
So,
All right.
although I had a near fright and a.
Yes, thanks.
What we'd call a near-death experience. It's good we have a team here to just double check. And so we are good. You do not need a second reading.
Okay.
Although I do think staff heard you when you were talking about fine tuning that section. So I know they're
Yep.
going to be diligent to bring
Yep.
that back to you.
We got the nod from you.
Yes.
Get it.
The non-class, yes. Thank you.
Are you double billing? I'm just,
All right, so moving on quickly to page 78, beach nourishment monitoring agreement with CPE.
This is something you do almost yearly, necessary for monitoring the beach so we can see how it performs. It's especially important that we keep doing this after the project in 22 and part of 23. A year from now, we'll know exactly how much sand we've lost. We'll know how much sand we've gained and where. And that's all part of this project or this proposal. And the perhaps one of the more important things about this is if there's a declared storm, FEMA wants to know that we've stuck to our plan. And absent doing this, we wouldn't be able to get reimbursement in the event of a declared disaster.
Is it declared storm tropical and above?
I think
just
it's
curious.
I think it's damage and above.
It's what?
I think it's damage and above.
Damage.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to reach a certain
certain
threshold of,
All right.
Because we've had a
Loss.
couple that we,
Nor'easter is not a
That-
declared
no,
storm.
we couldn't claim them.
Never mind.
Actually, the government's got to declare it.
Nor'easter does more damage.
Okay, to the thing.
All right, so
All right.
beach nourishment monitoring, yes.
Do we limit them to, I mean, they need to perform the monitoring at the same time every year? Like,
well, they
it's a
do,
May shot?
the
Or they
reason
go through
it's done in,
December and then a February? I mean,
they do it in June so that the idea being it's just ahead of the hurricane season. So if there was a hurricane in October, we would do a survey in October and anything that was lost in between there, we would claim.
Okay.
But they are being consistent. at the
Yes, sir.
dates that they're-
Consistent with the timing and also consistent with where they take the measurements.
The
Oh, yeah.
Across the
transit-
beach.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
From
Yeah.
south to north?
Yeah.
Yeah, they hit
All the
all the
different,
way.
all the
The whole
different
thing, yeah,
stations.
The whole thing,
Yeah.
okay, good, all right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, FEMA won't
All right.
shell out the money.
Motion to authorize the town manager to sign the attached proposal for 2023 annual monitoring service with CPE.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Planning board appointment, page 90. Wes, you want to do this
Yes, ma'am, really
speed
quick.
talk?
Mr. Ed Lawler has served several terms on the planning board. His term sets to expire at the end of this month. He's indicated an interest to continue serving another 3-year term. So I provided you all with the list of the terms. And we do have, just have to say, we do have one application from someone interested in serving on the board, Mr. Charlie Reese. But at the same time, we recommend Mr. Lawler be reappointed to another 3-year term.
Thanks, Wes.
Yes, ma'am.
You need a motion?
Any Any discussion? Well, do you want a motion? Yes, please. Give us a motion, Leo.
I move that we reappoint Ed Lawler with a term that expires on June 30th, 2026.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I don't know.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. We're going to now, any general public comment?
I think everybody left.
Seeing none. Council business. I know for certain we're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks. That's June the 20th at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Matt, do you have anything for us?
Now, do we need a motion to move these agenda items to the next meeting?
Do we need a motion to delay the two
amend
agenda items?
You do need to make a motion, and when you do, we need, I would request that to the closed session statutory citation, you add A3 to include attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
Mr. Hobbs is here and asked that that be added for clarification,
Got it.
please.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we amend tonight's agenda to delay items 10 and 14 to June 20th, 9 a.m. workshop meeting.
And to add.
And to add
A3.
A3 to the closed session
Attorney-client privilege.
attorney-client privilege.
Yes, ma'am.
That's my
Second.
motion.
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay,
That was my business.
that was your business. Paula?
No.
Mark?
Nope.
Leo?
I'm going to try to keep this very short. You may have noticed April and May, I was absent from up here. That was because my wife had her left knee replaced, and we had medical things to take care of at that point in time. Also, since I'm also on the planning board, some of you may have been hearing about our 10-year long-range tourism management plan, which there was a public hearing a couple weeks ago. Elizabeth was there. Of course, I was there because of the planning board, so I got copies of it. So if you got nothing else to do, you can read and see what we're talking about over a 10-year period.
Thanks, Leo. It's pretty.
And the other thing I had was I did have my report for occupancy is pretty flat at this point through March. And food is up about 9%, so everybody's eating better. But
I like that.
so, but there's still, and Mike probably can relate to it a little bit. They're still, trying to figure out where it's going. Are we going to keep our numbers up? But I think it's going to return to what we think might be normal. It might be a new normal. And I was in 2 meetings today of the planning board, so they're pretty active right now. We had a budget meeting and we had a personnel meeting. So that's all I got right now.
And you actually mean the visitors, the tourism board?
Yeah, tourism board.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. We know that. Very good. Thanks, Leo. Who would like to make a motion that we go into closed session?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Mark.
Make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.1, point A, point 5, and A3.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're in closed session.